Okay, welcome back. So for this element, it's you should be able to assess imperialism. So basically, you need to decide, is it good, is it bad, why and why not, and you need to be able to see all sides of it. And we're looking at how imperialism takes place in Africa and in Asia. And we're going to talk about the geography and the natural resources that exist. Okay, so let's first start with, why should we even invade and control other nations? Some people would say we should go into other nations and we should control them because it's our responsibility. Some should say, well, they need help and we can offer it. We can afford to do it. Others would say, oh, we shouldn't. They need to take care of themselves. Sorry, I have a puppy. 3. And so, all right, so let's look at imperialism. What is imperialism? Imperialism is increasing influence over another country through diplomacy or military force. So basically, imperialism is going in, taking over another country, and doing it either through diplomatic relations or doing it by force, okay, with your army. So I want you to kind of see how this develops over the years. In 1815, Western European countries like England, France, Portugal, Spain, controlled 35% of the globe. Okay, so not just their own country, but other countries as well and continents. By 1950, so within 100 years, those countries will now control 85% of the globe. That's a lot, okay? Most of it's done through wars. Some of it's done through diplomacy. If you ever get an opportunity to watch a movie called Anna and the King, there's a lot of imperialistic subtleties, but not so subtle, innuendos that are in that movie. It's a very good movie, and it kind of gives you an idea of what imperialism looks like, both subtle and by force. But why during the 1800s or the 19th century were countries motivated to go in and take over? Well, one, they wanted raw materials. Okay, so a lot of countries had things that they didn't, like cotton and tobacco and rice and tea and coffee bean, all kinds of stuff, spices, timber, like wood and stuff. They also had luxury goods, things that they couldn't get in their own country. They wanted to control other lands because the more control you had over other lands, the more power you had. And anything that would help their militaries grow. All right, so imperialism in Africa. First of all, it was mostly the British that invaded Africa for the most part. They conquered most of that African continent compared to other Western European countries like France, Portugal, Germany, Spain, and Italy. The British kind of stayed to the coastline because the farther in you got, you ran into jungles and more and warmer climates and temperate zones. And so you had diseases like malaria and things like that the British couldn't deal with. So they just kind of stayed out of those areas. And what you find in Africa, you find diamonds, you find gold, you find salt. And those were incredibly valuable. They're very rare in other countries. So the British wanted those as well. So there's a raw material that they want. And that's what kind of motivated them to go in and conquer Africa. You saw a picture earlier in the week, or earlier in this unit, I guess, that said the scramble for Africa. And you see the French, the Portuguese, the British, the Italians, the Germans, the Spanish, all like tug of war with the continent of Africa. They wanted to control Africa. They wanted it. They all saw the value in the continent and what it had. So geography may have played a little bit of a role in those nations not conquering it so early, but eventually those countries will get over that and they'll dominate that continent. All of these Western European nations are going to meet together in Berlin and discuss how they're going to divide up the continent. So I want you to think about that from the perspective of a native in Africa. Like, these other foreign nations are meeting somewhere to decide how they're going to split up your nation. That's going to create a lot of resentment. That's going to create a lot of anger and frustration and intense battles. All right, so when I tell you to go watch the movie Anna and the King, it's about imperialism in Asia. So it's, might be a good way to kind of see how that plays out. But European nations are already in Asia at this time, even as early as the late 1400s, early 1500s. And the British have this company called the British East India Company, and a lot of times you'll see it abbreviated as BEIC, British East India Company. And they used that for trading, but they used it as a way to gain a foothold in India and other Asian countries. So it was very strategic. It was very subtle. And before a lot of the Asian countries knew it, they were being conquered by the British, or they were already under the control of the British. But India is pretty unique because it's a very strategic location, not just for trade, but for your military bases and things like that. It gives you easy access to Africa and other parts of Asia, and it's right there on the ocean. It's a big peninsula, so it was a way for the British to control a lot of parts of Asia. And Asia had a lot of things too, but India had cotton and opium. Opium is a drug. Cotton, we all know we use to make clothes with. But India was known as the crown jewel of the British Empire. Like, it was the crown jewel, like the number one piece on the British crown. So they also wanted parts of Asia because they had silk and porcelain and tea, things that they couldn't get where they were at. All right, so we talked about benefits and pitfalls to imperialism, but I want you to kind of see the stuff that's listed here. Ooh, my fault. Okay. Britain's control, having Britain control your nation or your land it has its ups and it has its downs, a lot of the downs. But one, the benefits here, they're going to create hospitals. They're going to organize food distribution. So you're going to get more food, for the most part, create schools to teach them, but they're going to get a Western European education, not study their own traditions and customs and history. And it's going to be very one-sided. So they're going to make, the British are going to make themselves look really good inside these schools, and in the history books. They're going to leave out all the bad and negative things. And then they're going to build railroads and telegraphs. So there's a good infrastructure that they're building, but the problem is a lot of the government officials are going to be very corrupt. They're in it for the money and how they can make themselves successful. Famine, a lot of people are going to starve. So a lot of the people that are undesirable are going to be left out. And a lot of diseases are going to spread. So, there's that.